Great. Well, I think it is about time to get started. Thank you everyone for being here. So excited to have you with us on this Saturday afternoon. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Before we get started, everyone can continue writing your names and where you're calling in from in the chat box. Maybe also something that you're hoping to learn today or the reason you decided to join in on this call. My name is Emma Fisher, and I'm the Chester and Delaware County organizer with Penn Environment. I'm so excited that you could all be here to join me, our partners at the Sierra Club, Ready for 100, Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania, and all of our wonderful speakers today for this Clean, Healthy Water and Air webinar. Before I introduce our incredible speakers and we get started, I want to just one more time go over some features of Zoom. First, again, please note that this webinar is being recorded. And second, since there are so many people joining us, everyone is currently muted, but there are still several ways to communicate. So as you can see on the screen, you can look in the different corners of your screen for several icons that say Q&A, chat, raise hand, and exit. Those buttons will allow you to interact with us throughout the webinar. The chat button will pull up the chat box where you can type your thoughts or introduce yourself or type ideas as they come up throughout. The Q&A button allows you to type your questions and it will put them in the queue for our speakers to answer either throughout the event or at the end. And then the raise hand button indicates that you have something to say and we can find you and unmute you if that seems like something that makes sense. So these buttons could be in any corner of your screen, so look around for those because we definitely want to hear from you and to engage with you throughout this webinar. Of course, feel free to type questions in the chat as we go, but again, the Q&A button is the best way for us to be able to put those questions in the queue and make sure we don't miss them. If you're having any trouble with Zoom, feel free to write that in the chat box or in the Q&A, and our tech wizard, Alex, will try to help you out. So shout out to Alex. Thanks for joining us to make sure this webinar goes smoothly today. So
actually,
now,
you could ask that in the directly in the Q&A. That way I could see it more easily and answer it directly. That would be great. If you have any problems with Zoom or figuring it out.
Great.
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you, Alex. So if you're having Zoom issues, find the Q&A button and type it in, and Alex will help you directly. So now let's get started. Again, I'm so glad that all of you could join us today. Over the next hour and a half or so, we'll be discussing some of the connections between clean water, clean air, clean energy, and your health, and how you can take action in your own lives, as well as at the state and local level, to help protect our water, air, and health. So now I want to quickly go over the agenda for this webinar, and then we will jump right in. So first, we'll be hearing from Dr. Scott Ensign of the Stroud Water Research Center about water issues that we face here in Chester County and to learn about our watershed. Then we'll hear from Dave McKeon, the owner of Lester Water, to hear about drinking water quality issues that affect Chester and Delaware County and options for home water filtration systems. And then Jesse Lytle from Haverford College will bring us home. Jesse is the Chief Sustainability Officer and the Vice President of Haverford College, and he will be talking about air quality in our health and the clean energy progress that we're already seeing in the region. And then finally, we will go over 3 quick ways that we can all take action today. All of our different co-sponsored groups that made this event possible, including Penn Environment, the Sierra Club, and Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania, will give you quick ways to engage, and then we will wrap up with all of your questions. So please ask those questions in the Q&A as we're going, like I said, because we definitely want to answer them. So now, with no further ado, I am happy to introduce Dr. Scott Ensign. Scott is the Vice President, Assistant Director, and a research scientist at the Stroud Water Research Center in Avondale. The Stroud Center's mission is to advance knowledge and stewardship of our freshwater systems through global research, education, and watershed restoration. Scott is currently involved in research on the White Clay Creek and the Brandywine River and contributes to the Stroud Center's Wiki Watershed Toolkit, which is a free online set of tools for researching, managing, and learning about watershed health. So Dr. Ensign, over to you.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for the introduction and the opportunity to participate today in this exciting event. Thank all of you in the audience for taking the time out of a beautiful Saturday to join us and learn about our natural resources in Chester County and how you can be involved. If you're joining from outside of the county, rest assured that you'll learn something valuable and actionable for your own watershed. Next slide, Alex. The thing that I want you to take away from this presentation today is that our water resources in Chester County are homegrown and hyperlocal. Homegrown and hyperlocal. That means that the water that we drink comes solely from rainwater that falls on our forests, fields, neighborhoods, and towns inside Chester County. This is unique. This is far different than other places in the United States, like Los Angeles or New York City, where their drinking water comes through pipes from hundreds of miles away. And I think it's crucial that you know this and that we all value this in the same way that we value local farm products. We support locally grown food because we trust those who grow it. We can support our local economy at the same time. We feel connected with our community and with our environment. And those are all the same reasons that we should value our homegrown, hyper-local water that we drink. I shared these thoughts with my wife recently, and she said, yeah, water is our most local resource. And that fits perfectly. Water is our most local resource. And not only should we value that, but we should protect that. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Next slide, Alex. Next slide. Thanks. So I want everybody to participate in a quick survey. So you can check the box that applies to you, and the results are all going to be visible to everyone. It's anonymous. So go ahead and click a box and in a button, and we should start seeing results come in. Are we making progress over there, Alex?
Yeah, so it looks like that 34% of people say their drinking water comes from a river, while 39% say their drinking water comes from a well, and 26% do not know.
All right, well that fits actually pretty well with the statistics that I'm going to share with you today. And for those who don't know where their water comes from, I hope by the end of this talk, I'm going to point you in a direction where you can learn that information. So that's really, thanks for the feedback. That's really valuable to see at the outset as we get started. And there's our full results. All right, great. Thanks, Alex. Next slide. I told you that your water was hyperlocal, and here's what I mean by that. If you drive as much as the average American citizen, which is about 12 miles per day, you've driven almost twice as far as your drinking water travels from its source to get to your house. Think about that. That is hyperlocal water. Your water is traveling less distance than you are. Next slide, Alex. Most people in Chester County drink water that comes directly from streams and reservoirs, about 56%. So streams and the reservoirs that those streams fill. And the blue dots on this map show the locations where that water is pumped from streams and reservoirs before it goes through a water treatment plant and ultimately piped to your faucet. 44% of people in Chester County get their water from wells instead of streams. And those people are probably even closer to their source water than the dots on that map were. And in many cases, your wells are in your backyard. So with the exception of some water that comes from the Susquehanna River and is piped into Octorara Reservoir on the west side of the county, and the Schuylkill River that originates outside of Chester County, the vast majority of our water comes from these watersheds within Chester County. These watersheds funnel the rainwater and groundwater off the landscape, forming the streams that we drink from. And again, the water that we drink in Chester County is homegrown and hyperlocal. But how much water do we really use? So in order to explain this, I want you to close your eyes and imagine a scene with me. Imagine that you close all the doors and windows to your house, seal them up, and then you turn on all the faucets with the drains closed, right? And the water starts to fill up in your house. And this might take a while, but ultimately, if your windows and doors are watertight, the water's gonna start pouring out of your attic. Now imagine 326 houses being filled with water every day. That's how much water we use in Chester County as citizens, 326 houses full of water. That's something our streams and rivers can easily give us when it's in a rainy period, but where does all that water come from when it's not raining? As our streams start to dry out between rainstorms and during the hot summer months, we rely on reservoirs to keep our faucets running. Next slide, Alex. But those reservoirs aren't enough. Back one slide, thanks, Alex. What we really count on is groundwater seeping into our streams to keep them flowing. You can think of groundwater as the bank account for our water, storing our drinking water during wet periods and slowly releasing water back into our streams when we need it most. So hold that thought, because we're going to get back to that in a minute. Many of you are probably wondering how safe your water is, and that's a great question. On the whole, our public water systems do a very good job of polishing stream water and groundwater so that we can drink it. Most public water suppliers also offer an annual consumer confidence report that discloses violations in their drinking water. So if you pay for your water from a company, you can ask for the annual report. And I'll also share a link at the end of my presentation about how you can search for violations from a drinking water supplier. And our next speaker, David McKeon from Leicester Water, is going to share with you more details on how you can test and treat your water. Next slide, Alex. Our drinking water in Chester County comes from the same forests, fields, and streets that are all around us, making our drinking water homegrown and hyperlocal. But our water isn't just for drinking. We have gorgeous recreational opportunities for boating, fishing, and swimming in Chester County. Next slide. And homegrown water isn't just for us. The health of our aquatic ecosystems is not only critical for our recreation, but is protected by law. This spectacular picture of this mayfly from the genus Epeorus, one of our more sensitive stream dwellers, we call these animals macroinvertebrates because you can see them with your naked eye. What you need to know is that in Pennsylvania, law designates a particular set of uses for each stream, river, and reservoir in the state. By now, you can probably guess what those three uses are. There's water supply, meaning drinking water, irrigation, and other uses. There's recreation, boating, swimming, and fishing. And there's aquatic life. Obviously, it's not up to the streams to follow the law. It's up to us to ensure that these three uses can be met. So how are we doing? Next slide, Alex. The truth is that we aren't doing well in Chester County. 41% of our stream miles in the county don't meet the requirements of one or more of their designated uses. Those are the red lines on this map. Unfortunately, even some of our high quality and exceptional value streams, those are the ones with the strictest standards, are in red on this map. Next slide, Alex. How do we know that these streams are impaired? Because state agency staff sample all over the county, covering 1,394 miles of streams in their sampling efforts. And that's just the monitoring and testing done by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. If we put a dot on this map for every spot sampled by Stroud Water Research Center, U.S. Geological Survey, and the many other academic organizations we have around here, you wouldn't be able to see the county at all. It would be buried underneath a heap of dots. That's all to say that the conditions aren't in doubt. We have the data, we have the science that tells us what's wrong. Next slide, please. So what is wrong? Well, as you might expect, our water problems are homegrown too, and it all starts with stormwater runoff, whether it's our streets and parking lots or poorly managed farmlands. Stormwater runoff is where the problems start. Instead of rain soaking into the ground where it belongs, too much of it runs off the landscape directly into streams, carrying with it all kinds of pollutants. Next slide, please. The bottom line is too much, too fast, too filthy. So this slide shows you a list of technical terms the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection uses to describe the causes of stream impairments in Chester County itself. So these are technical terms here that describe why our streams aren't working, doing what we want them to do. The most common cause on this list of stream impairments in Chester County is flow alteration. That means that the stream gets too much, too fast during storms, and too little groundwater percolates in during those wet times to feed the stream during dry times. Not surprisingly, turbidity, siltation, habitat alteration, and suspended solids are other common causes of impairment because they're closely linked with flow alteration. Next slide, please. So what does flow alteration look like? It looks like a fire hose blasts out stream channels and gullies like this one. Too much, too fast. Unfortunately, that means bye-bye natural stream habitat. And because that stormwater is carrying with it all of the stuff we put on the landscape, like pesticides, nutrients, and waste, it's really a 1-2 punch. First you get the water, then the contaminants. The result? 957 miles of impaired streams in Chester County. Next slide, please, Alex. Unfortunately, there are more challenges that our water quality managers haven't really even grappled with yet. I'll give you one example of many, and that's salt, sodium chloride, like the kind we put on our roads during the winter. Unlike other kinds of common pollutants that can degrade if given time and opportunity before they get into a stream, salt doesn't go away after it flushes into our streams. It accumulates in our groundwater, which ultimately ends up back in our streams. So focus on the blue line in this figure. That's the one labeled average on the right-hand side. This is the chloride concentration at 18 streams across Chester County that are sampled by the U.S. Geological Survey. Notice that it's slowly creeping up between 1998 and 2018, and that's not good. What we're seeing is not only just that salty road runoff turns our streams into almost seawater in some places during winter, but that it's starting to contaminate our groundwater too. What's more, the average chloride in Chester County streams is already bordering on disruptful or harmful to aquatic life, which has a lawful right to clean water. This and other insidious chemicals that run off our streets, lawns, and go down our sink drains are not as easy or inexpensive for our sewage treatment systems to make go away. So what can we do? Next slide, please. Fortunately, our water is homegrown and hyperlocal, and therefore we have the power to fix what's wrong. And the only place to start is in the small headwater streams where our watersheds begin. Over half of the streams in Chester County are the size of the one in this picture or smaller, over half. And conveniently, these are the streams that wind through our neighborhoods, our towns, our backyards. Fixing what's wrong in Chester County starts right here at these capillaries of our stream network. And the good news is that your yard and neighborhood are where some of these problems can start to get fixed. You can install rain garden and impervious pavers to promote infiltration of rainwater back into the ground. You can adopt new landscaping practices to promote infiltration and reduce chemicals on your lawn and the ones that go down your drain or the gutter on the street. You can use rain barrels to capture downspout runoff for watering. The last one is a big one, planting trees along streams. Maybe not everyone has streams on their property where they can do this, but you can get involved in your community with tree plantings. Next slide, please, Alex. We call the forests that grow beside streams riparian forests, and they play a huge role in reducing pollutants like sediment, nitrogen, and phosphorus that could get into our streams. They also nourish the stream by shading it and keeping it cool in summer, and by providing leaves for healthy macroinvertebrate communities during the fall. Nearly all of Pennsylvania's streams used to be bordered by forests, and the efforts of our many organizations, agencies, and landowners are helping to restore those forests and the streams they rely on. Next slide, Alex. Some of the ways that we can protect our homegrown, hyperlocal water has to be done through the efforts of townships, municipalities, and the county itself. One of the important ways of protecting streams is by protecting open spaces of forests, meadows, and wetlands in our watersheds. And believe it or not, 1/3 of Chester County is protected as open space, either as parks, preserves, or conservation easements. And this is making a huge benefit and impact on our streams. But we can measure it not just ecologically, but we can also measure that economically. For example, open space preservation in Chester County provides us $200 million per year as a county in services. And it saves us a one-time cost of $263 million in what we need to build to manage the stormwater if we develop those areas. Not to mention $27 million that we'd spend every year to maintain those systems. Next slide. But I'm here to tell you there is good news. All of these efforts that we've been making are paying off, and we're seeing results. Remember that aquatic life is one of the uses that we are legally obligated to protect in streams, and it's one of the ways that we measure the macroinvertebrate populations in streams. So these are the hundreds of species of macroinvertebrates in Chester County, and we measure which ones are present, which ones aren't, to assess whether that aquatic life use for a stream is being satisfied. Focus on the blue line on this chart, the one labeled average on the right-hand side. It shows that the 18 streams that are sampled across the county by the U.S. Geological Survey, and it shows that blue line slowly creeping up from left to right. So we're still in the fair category, and there's even some which are in the poor category. We know that recovery of these aquatic communities takes time because of the complexity of aquatic ecosystems. And that's why we use them as the final measure of success. While we see improvement, what we've done so far isn't nearly enough. We can't let up until these efforts improve our stream conditions so that all of our streams are in the good to excellent category. This could take another generation, and we need to remember that we are building on the hard work that was started here in Chester County 70 years ago by a group of dedicated citizens that formed the Brandywine Valley Association, the first small watershed organization in the United States. We all must continue their legacy of action today. Next slide, please, Alex. So I'll leave you with 3 challenges that you can do today to start in the effort to protect and restore Chester County's homegrown hyperlocal water. And the first is really easy. Take the afternoon, go for a walk around your neighborhood, and find your nearest headwater stream. Remember, this is the capillary of the watershed, these headwater streams where the bad stuff first gets into our water supply. This is where most of our problems can be solved. Learn how water moves through your neighborhood and into this capillary system of streams by going to wikiwatershed.org/model. This is an initiative of the Stroud Water Research Center, and you'll find a lot of learning opportunities for everyone here, whether you're homeschooling a child or whether you're a professional water resource manager. Second, plan what you can do at home using the guide available at stormwaterguide.org. This is a nice pamphlet of material that can help you get started thinking about what you can do at home. Third, find an organization in Chester County to get involved with. And from the chat that we saw earlier on, it's clear that many of you are engaged with organizations. Next slide, please, Alex. Finding an organization, or hopefully multiple organizations, to get involved in is really easy. Here's just a few of the many wonderful organizations that we have in Chester County that are focused on water resources. So play around on a few websites, find one that matches your interests and addresses issues that you care about. Join a mailing list. It's free for these organizations, and it's a great way to learn more about the activities and the programs that those organizations are involved in. So I'll leave you with a few quick links. that can help set you on a path to involvement and solutions for our water challenges in Chester County. Thank you for your time and attention today, and I wish all of you a safe and healthy weekend and future during these challenging times. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Ensign. That was so interesting. I'm sure there are questions, so feel free to keep asking questions in the Q&A feature, everyone, and I will make sure to send around all of those links and resources in a follow-up email so that you don't lose any of that material. But now I would like to hand it over to our next speaker, Dave McKeon, to talk. Thank you so much to all of our incredible speakers. Before we open it up to Q&A, although you can always keep typing your questions using the Q&A feature, I wanted to point out that this event could not have been possible without collaboration between all of our wonderful speakers, as well as several environmental groups in the area, including the Sierra Club's Chester County Ready for 100 group and Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania. So before moving to focus on the question and answer, we wanted to call attention to 3 important ways you can get involved with all of our work to make your voice heard and make a difference protecting our environment and acting on all the issues we just talked about. So I'll go first and then hand it over to my friends Paula Klein and Jess Ketterett. So again, I am the Chester and Delaware County Climate Organizer with Penn Environment. Penn Environment is a people-powered environmental advocacy group working to ensure clean air, clean water, open spaces, and a livable climate for all Pennsylvanians. And we do that by working with people like you all across the state to help collectively raise our voices and build a strong grassroots movement for the environment and to advocate for good environmental policies in Harrisburg and in Washington, D.C. So to do that, we need to be able to work with all of you. So I wanted to give a quick plug for joining our Mobile Action Network texting program, which is, I think, one of the best and most fun ways to stay up to date on urgent legislation, moving through the legislature at the state level in Harrisburg or federally. We'll send 2 or 3 action alerts via text every month. It comes from a real person on our staff. We'll let you know how you can take action or what other upcoming events are happening in your area, such as this webinar or in-person events when those are feasible. So I would definitely encourage all of you to join our Mobile Action Network texting program. It's a really easy way to get involved. To join, you can just text the words PA Climate to the number 21333 using your cell phone, and then follow the steps that it will respond to you with in order to fully enroll. And the reason this is such a great tool is because, again, it keeps you updated on urgent action alerts, upcoming events and webinars, but we'll also make sure you get information about our upcoming Climate Action Lobby Day, which is our biggest event of the year, where we normally bring hundreds and hundreds of people across the state to Harrisburg to advocate for good climate policy and 100% renewable energy legislation at the state level. This year, Climate Action Lobby Day is taking place virtually on Tuesday, June 16th, and we would love for all of you to join us to make your voices heard. I will put the sign-up link for that in the chat box, but again, if you sign up for our texting program, you will get all that information as well. And then, of course, please email me if you'd like to get more involved with Penn Environment, and I'll put my email address in the chat box as well. But thanks again for being here, everyone. Now I want to hand it over to Paula Klein with the Sierra Club.
Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful program, and I want to express my gratitude for our speakers for joining us today, and hope everyone will get outside today. Even if you're not at Stroud today, you can enjoy the beautiful spring weather that's welcoming us and reminding us how important the work we're doing is. I want to just take a minute to talk a little bit about Ready for 100. You just heard from our colleague from Haverford that there are many communities across the region that have made a commitment to doing renewable energy through creating a local energy policy. We don't have to wait for our national or state government to take action, and that's largely because we are committed to our households, our neighborhoods, our county, and we want very much to create a safe, livable community that's protecting and bolstering public health, improving our air and water quality, and actually trying to look at the commitments we need to make for a sustainable future that's equitable and resilience in the face of what we already know to be a pretty dramatic series of climate disruptions that we've seen in the last few years that are beyond what any of us imagined to see in our lifetime. So I'd like to just say about how you might get involved in one way or the other. here in Chester County, we have 11 communities that have already made a commitment. So if you live in one of those, and I hope you'll open our website to figure out which those are, but if you live in one of those, we urge you to get involved with the local team working on now getting a transition plan in place. If you are in a community that has yet to pass a resolution to commit to specific targets of transitioning all of your electricity supplies to renewable by 2030, 35, and all other purposes, as we heard again recently around transportation and everything that happens inside our buildings that uses energy, as we saw with the example from Haverford College, then I would love to help you and the rest of the team that I work with, help you get an orientation together to talk to your neighbors, friends, organizations, to then make a presentation to your Board of Supervisors or council, whatever form of government you're a part of. So we have a basic approach of supporting environmental advisory councils, sustainability advisory councils, and boards of supervisors to start this conversation. We do stakeholder meetings, which is, the fancy language to say we talk to each other to find out what's important to us in doing this work. We really promote cooperation between neighboring communities because we heard already the watershed doesn't respect our jurisdictional boundaries, the air doesn't respect our jurisdictional boundaries. So let's work together and not have to reinvent the wheel. And we also try to celebrate and lift up our early adopters and energy champions like Haverford College and Westchester University here in Chester County, so people can see for themselves, policymakers, homeowners, businesses, schools, houses of worship can see for themselves this is doable right here, right now. So we hold tours and expos like the one we would have held at Stroud today and information sessions like that. So I hope you'll try to connect with us. Our webpage is there. Join us. We would love to have you, and we'd love to expand beyond the 12 communities that have currently committed. We have a beautifully landscaped county. Let's make it equally sustainable. So I hope you'll join us. And thanks again for attending today.
Hello, thanks so much, Paula. Hello, everyone. My name is Jess Catterett from Conservation Voters of PA. I see a lot of familiar faces here in our virtual crowd, and I'm glad you could join us today. A big thank you to each of our panelists for all of that information. We're going to get to your questions in just a second, but quickly, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about Conservation Voters of PA, what we do, and how you can safely vote by mail in Pennsylvania's new primary date on June 2nd. So if you haven't worked with us or heard of us before, Conservation Voters of PA, we are another statewide environmental advocacy group. We are the state affiliate for the League of Conservation Voters. And as you may know, we work really hard to make sure that you have all of the information you need about your elected officials and how they have voted or voted against the environment by our scorecards, which are this year's scorecard will be released this July. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat box where you can sign up to stay engaged with updates and make sure you learn all about how your own elected officials are doing. We're quite lucky here in Chester County that we now have a majority of environmental champions here, but still we always want to support them in the work they do. So most important certainly is to elect environmentalists to office. We can only do that by going to vote. So if you had not heard, our original primary date was on April 28th. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, it has been pushed to June 2nd. And Governor Wolf did sign a law into our laws this year that allow us to vote by mail, not just for an absentee ballot. So you want to make sure to register for your vote by mail ballot, which you can do at votespa.com. I'm going to drop a link in the chat to do that. You can check on your voter registration. You can ensure that your ballot gets to your mailbox and send it back before June 2nd. It can't just be postmarked by June 2nd. They have to have it in their hands by 8 p.m. on June 2nd.
feel free to ask any further questions. Other than that, I'm going to pass it back off to Emma.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again to all of our wonderful speakers and co-sponsors. It's been so great having you all here for this very informative and interesting discussion. So now